to Licensed Poetics, a podcast about books and art. I'm your host, Marlene. And today we have an extremely exciting return guest, Marlene.
Hello again. We're in Singapore.
I'm finally back. This is my second time in Singapore. The first time I was here was 2018, so quite a few years now, and I'm so happy to be back. But you are not here on holiday.
Hopefully I'm not here on holiday. Hopefully I could stay because I'm trying to move here because my boyfriend works here as a bartender in kind of like central Singapore. So I'm trying to find a job. Been talking to a lot of different people and just kind of getting to know what the whole place is like and even what the literary scene is like here.
That's so good. I hear you've already been to a few poetry slams.
Yes. I went to one poetry slam, which was really cool, which I can tell you a little bit more about later.
Oh, yeah. Is that going to be your story time?
Yes, it is. So don't tread on me.
That's amazing. Okay. Speaking of story time, that's a new segment that I'm implementing in Licensed Poetics officially from this episode. The purpose of it is to give us a chance to show more personality. And if you aren't interested in that, that's totally fine. You can use the chapters or the timestamps down below to skip ahead to the reading updates or to the interview, or in this case, the book club.
Yeah, if you just don't care about us as people or human beings, that's fine.
That's totally fine. Oh, yes. But today's episode is going to be a book club episode, and we're talking about two books, actually. So it's a double treat for everyone. Which books are we discussing today?
So we're actually discussing two books both written by Japanese women. One is called The Hole by Hiroko Oyamada, I
guess so, yeah.
And the other is called Convenience Store Woman, which is by Sayaka Murata.
Hey everyone, this is Marlene in editing. It turns out our discussion was a little too long to fit into one episode, so today you'll hear our thoughts on Convenience Store Woman, and to hear our thoughts on the other book, The Hole, watch out for a future episode. Thanks, enjoy! And we'll try to be professional this time and try to separate the spoiler section from the spoiler-free section.
Oh, true.
Okay, let's do your bio first, Marlene. I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with you already, but just for the millions of new listeners joining in right now.
What is it? Millions of listeners?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Marlene Jo Baquiran is an Asian-Australian writer from Gadigal Land, Sydney, now based in Singapore. Her work has been published in Island, More Than Melanin, and Riverstone Journal. She also works deeply on climate in climate tech development and grassroots action, which won her the Edna Award in Community Activism. Woohoo! This is special because the last time you were here, your work was still forthcoming in Ireland, and now it's obviously out.
Yeah, that was really exciting to see my essay on like a double-page spread in a real print magazine, and they got these beautiful photos to go with it as well, so that was a lot of fun.
Singapore is so damn hot, by the way. Like, I think I forgot since the last time I was here how hot it is.
Yeah, and it's mostly like the humidity part of it as well, because it's not super high in terms of temperature. It's like humidity and the sun is also very direct as well.
Yeah. There was one line from your recent Substack, which I will leave Marlene's Substack in the description. What did you say? The sky is like a dead blanket or something?
Oh, a dead blanket.
Is that what you said?
Interesting.
I remember that line.
I think I said the air is like a fat blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's do the story time.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'll go first?
Yeah.
Okay, the story time today is more sweet than funny. So I recently went to a wedding, and by the way, both the bride and the groom are listeners of this podcast.
Hello.
So you know who you are. Shout out to you guys. I love you both so much. Thank you for supporting the podcast, and thank you for inviting me to your beautiful wedding. I haven't been to many weddings in my life, but that was definitely the most beautiful wedding I have ever been to. It was in a book barn.
A barn?
Book barn, yeah.
Oh.
A barn, I think originally a barn that had been repurposed as a bookshop, I think, and now repurposed as a wedding venue. Which is incredible. Like, it's a bookshop during the day.
Oh, so they do sell books.
Yes. It's associated with Bookclub books, I believe. which is a bookshop in Australia. And yeah, it's a bookshop during the day, and then at night they kind of cleared out all the shelves in the middle of the room. But then all the shelves kind of around the room are still there with these beautiful books displayed like all around. And then they just put long tables in the room for the guests to sit. And like they had like little hanging lights from the ceiling.
Very
it was
romantic.
completely gorgeous. And what's even more special is the bride and groom created a custom shelf where they had a bunch of different books, and then they wrapped the books in paper and then written the guests' names on the paper so that every guest had his or her own book to take home.
That's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
The whole setup.
Yeah. You know what book they picked for me?
What? What book?
It was Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov.
Do they know what the book is about?
Yes, they do.
And they were like, this really screams Fengling.
Totally. And they obviously know I created the podcast, and the bride said that I think Fengling would interpret the book correctly.
Oh, hey, that's a huge compliment. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah, you don't want to give that to a to an uncritical reader.
No, if anyone out there hasn't read Lolita, it's considered a modern classic, and it's about a pedophile. So the pedophile's name is Humbert, and Lolita is the 13-year-old girl that he's obsessed with.
Yeah, it speaks for itself, right? But I remember it because I think I opened that book when I was very young as well. And it's quite famous for its very like beautiful opening lines in terms of the sound.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the thing that makes the book like really, really messed up and compelling, right? It's like the voice is so beautiful.
Yeah, Nabokov is known for his language.
Yeah. Interesting as well because it would have been translated from Russian.
No, he wrote it in English.
Oh.
Which is even more interesting because he's one of those English as a second language writers who ended up writing like an English
that's like Murakami,
novel.
Kind of. Because Murakami writes for translation.
As in he writes...
Like he writes
in
with
English?
translation in mind, and I think some of them
okay.
like he rewrites the whole thing. And I'm not the biggest Murakami expert, but like
I think Derek mentioned something similar as well.
Yeah, he's a Murakami.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because the opening line of Lolita, I just brought it up here. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. Lolita, the tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth.
Is that light of my life, fire of my loins?
Ow.
Because the guy Humbert, the pedophile, is this scholar from Europe. So the two sides of his life is that his demonic, sadistic side and his, I guess, literary and artistic side. He is that kind of complex character.
Yeah.
And the girl's name is actually Dolores, not Lolita at all.
Yeah.
Because Lolita is a sick nickname that he gave her. You know what's actually hilarious is that at the wedding, I started reading Lolita.
It's like while everyone else is dancing, you're just like in the corner.
My feet hurt. I cannot deal with standing. Like the beautiful ceremony was on grass, like outside, which was just gorgeous, but it did involve standing on grass in heel.
Okay,
And
that's painful.
I'm not used to wearing heels at all.
So you gotta numb it out with some pedophilia.
That sounds really bad. But you know what's like, for some reason, for the first time I read it, which is a few years ago now, I kind of skipped the foreword and I just started from chapter 1, which started with that fire of my loins line. And you know, there's so much controversy over how to interpret this book and stuff, but
is there? I feel like
so.
It's don't be a predator.
No, it's with the publishing industry, like the way they presented the story and stuff.
Yeah.
I know there's a big story about how the cover is designed.
Yeah.
I think Nabokov was like, no girls on the cover.
Oh,
but then the industry just kind of put like a girl in the heart.
So
A girl in like the heart-shaped sunglasses that kind of became associated with Lolita.
Oh.
And it's just not like, that was not cool at all.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, if you guys actually read the foreword of Lolita, it actually tells you pretty clearly how Nabokov believes this book should be interpreted. That, you know, the main character is a monster and that the girl is seen entirely through the predator's perspective.
Which, like, in theory, you could interpret the cover that way, but that's not the immediate response that it would trigger for you.
No, like
it'd be like, oh, this is a romance.
Exactly. Oh God.
This is like 500 Days of Summer or something.
Wait, isn't that a band?
No, it's not. It's a movie. It's from like the 2000s. It has Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zoe.
I know
Deschanel.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
There you go. You're in touch.
It's like I'm famously out of touch with culture. Wait, what's
it does
the band
sound like
called?
a band. There's a band called
There's a lot
of bands with summer. In the name, basically.
The Australian boy band.
Yes, I actually know who you're talking about.
Five.
No, I don't think it's a 5. It's like 5 Seconds of Summer. Wait, is that what I think so. 5
okay.
maybe. It's like the opposite of 500 Days of Summer. It's 5 Seconds of Summer. But they're like a one-hit wonder, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, I see. Damn. Oh yeah, speaking of out of touch with culture, I guess my last little bit of that story time is the bride and groom said that there's going to be a wishing well at the wedding. And I thought it was going to be like for people to put well wishes and stuff.
That makes sense.
Like cards. But it's actually for you to put money in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. That's where I thought you were going. Oh, so you thought it was like a guest book.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
no. Have you seen like a wishing well before? Or like a fountain where people throw coins
but
in?
that's in China and you throw like 1 RMB. You don't...
Because people are really cheap.
Yeah, and that's what only coins came in, like 1 RMB and 2 RMB.
Oh,
you don't put paper money
for
into
negatively stereotyping Chinese people just now.
No, but they are poor. That is not wrong. No, but like I never heard of wishing wells at wedding before.
No, same. Yeah, I haven't really seen that as much. And it hasn't really been a thing for many years that I've seen because, again, like, no one currently carries cash.
Yeah.
So, well, that's kind of a cute idea. And then do they collect the money?
Yeah, so everyone just brought their envelopes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I didn't bring an envelope, but I did send them the money by electronic transfer after the wedding. You know, along with a note explaining how I'm uncultured and I don't know what it is. They didn't mind.
That's so funny.
So yeah, love you guys. I'm counting on one of you or maybe both of you to be a guest on this podcast in the future, by the way. So
very cool.
So that's my story time. I hope you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
Yay. What's yours?
Okay, I just have a short story, a little bit of insight on what it's like me coming here, learning about the scene. So I connected with someone in the literary scene who is a poet. And they're very like prolific, impressive poet. So they write a lot about like migration and refugee issues and just have a very long career in writing poems. And as I was talking to them, it just so happened on the same day they were doing like a live poetry event, not run by them, but someone else. And I generally got this feeling like in Singapore, the literary scene is like very like quite young, a little bit like indie and interconnected. So there's quite a few bookshops that I find really interesting, but actually you can only get their stuff online. So there's no like physical presence. Yeah, but it turns out it's like there's just obviously a very small handful of publishers here. There's like a handful of people who've just like been in the scene and running most of the stuff and kind of caring for the community for like around 10 years. It sounds like that's roughly how old it is in terms of a legitimate community.
Do you mean in English literature?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the poetry event I went to, it was all in English. Sometimes there'd be references to other languages, but it was very like English literature focused. And in some of the books I've seen, they do a bit of like translation work or they do side-by-side stuff. But definitely a lot of stuff it feels very English focused basically.
Yeah, that's very interesting because obviously the multilingual nature of Singapore is like really apparent. Right?
Yeah.
And my friend actually told me something the other day, which is the Speak Good English campaign in the 70s. And I wonder maybe that has something to do with, what you said, the literary scene being 10 years old, because you've got to have that like English speaking general population before you can have a literary community,
That's a
right?
great point. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Actually, the poet I was speaking to,
What's
he was
their name?
talking a lot about. So his name's Theo, short for Theophilus.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's how you say it, which is a great name.
Yeah.
And so unique that I'm sure if you just looked it up, like Theophilus poet, you would be able to find him. But he was mentioning because a lot of writers here also teach English. And so he teaches an English class, primary, high school, something like that. And for him, a lot of his undertaking is focused on helping Singaporeans find their own voice, because there isn't as much of a established literary canon here. Sure, there's Chinese literature and there's American literature, there's European literature. And a lot of the times, especially when you're taught in school, you really lean on that canon and you think, like if my writing doesn't involve these like rolling hills and like the moors that represent whatever. And these things that very much indicate a different sense of place. Like the example he gave was like for Singapore, it can feel hard because it's like, it's this overwhelmingly consumerist, like capitalist, like business-oriented, corporatized, very urban, man-made kind of place. And it feels like, I shouldn't be writing about that. I should write about something romantic, natural, kind of dramatic. But my life feels so structured by like the rhythms of work and material needs and things like that. And his main task to help people find their voices to just be like more comfortable with expressing that part in their literature in different, more creative or honest ways. So he was mentioning a story that someone was writing or hadn't written about basically like being an office worker, except like all of your colleagues are these like monsters from various Southeast Asian mythologies. And I'm like, that is a really great representation that kind of captures like the time and place you're in, the maybe challenges of the diversity in a really interesting way as well.
Yeah, I would totally read that story.
Yeah.
And I would love like to see how office and corporate it gets between those monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like I would definitely read that.
Totally.
And that would bring that localness into the literature.
Exactly. I went to this spoken word poetry event that night as well. It was in this bar in like Chinatown, and I really enjoyed it. One thing I noticed is the way of speaking Singlish as well makes the spoken word poetry very different, because it's very like staccato, a little bit more to the point. Like
staccato,
the rhythm
exactly,
is fundamentally different. And so when I read Singaporean poetry that is meant to be read out loud, I just don't feel like I can kind of do it justice, especially in terms of humor. Like the way they have of like beelining to a punchline is really interesting. I'll give an example.
Yeah.
So a lot of things were themed around like food or like how expensive everything.
Oh, hell yeah. I really want to go to a spoken word event while I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone was writing this like poetry themed around love. They're talking about a lover who they feel really safe with, who they feel like protected by. And one of the things their lover says is like, everything expensive, so what you say? It's like, it's this idea of like
so what you say?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you can do it. I can't do it. And it's like, your knight in shining armor is like someone to whom nothing is too expensive. And I'm like, you would never get that in Sydney, Australia. Like, we also have the expensive thing, but it's like the expression is very different.
It's different.
And the sense of humor around it is very different.
I think you're so right, because spoken word is so vocal, right? So, of course, accent would change it dramatically.
Yeah.
And I just love Singapore and Malaysian accents.
Yeah.
And even last night, I was at a hawker center, and I noticed that this pho place, which was run by a couple of Vietnamese women, they were speaking English in that distinct, like, Southeast Asian accent as well, which I found sounds so endearing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't find it too difficult to understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Because a lot of it actually is based on Chinese grammar, I think.
That seems to make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of it, because it will definitely come from Malay influences as well. But I think a decent amount of it is Chinese grammar. So I find it really endearing.
And it feels like a lot of fluff is cut out as well.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, maybe this is a tangent, but like, why do you focus on English literature and writing rather than Chinese?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. Mainly because I just read more English literature. So, and also in China, nowadays, if you walk into a bookshop, like over 50% of the books are translated into Chinese. Actually, 50%, I would say, is a conservative estimate.
Okay.
Even like readers in China, like I feel that all they read is stuff that's been translated from English or from Japanese.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if it's translated from English or from Western literature, then I have the ability to just read the source material.
Yeah. So you might as well do that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like I thought, I mean, there's just so many people who can write something there.
But there are, of course, prominent like modern Chinese authors, and I read a lot of those as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like we should get started on the book now.
Let's do it.
Yay. Okay, so Convenience Store Woman. This is a momentous occasion because I haven't read Japanese literature in over 10 years.
Wow, 10 years.
Yeah. The last time I read Japanese literature, I was probably still in China, and I would have read the Chinese translated version. I think it was Norwegian Wood by Murakami.
What did you think?
I was too young to understand any of it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think I read Murakami as my first encounter with Japanese literature as well, around 2015. So maybe like not dissimilar timing.
Yeah.
And I kind of got it, and I also kind of didn't.
Convenience Store Woman. Okay, so let's do our 5-word summary.
Yeah.
In 5 words, summarize how you feel about this book.
Okay, I summarized kind of like the plot or the vibe or the arc of the story.
My 5 words is just I really liked it.
Okay.
Oh wait, that's 4 words. I actually really liked it. 5 words.
No, I think I can do it.
Okay.
Loosely. An un-American hero's journey. That's 4 words, but maybe make another word.
Un-American hero's journey.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Wow. Okay. You're going to have to explain, but I think we should do an overview of the book first.
Yeah.
And we'll keep it spoiler-free for any listener.
Wait, did you say yours?
Yeah, it's just I actually really liked it.
Oh, I'm trying to be too clever with mine.
Because like the 5 words, it's just like a feeling, you know? So the listener knows like it's not going to be an all complaining book club episode like the last one.
Was it a complaining one?
It was a confusing one. I just kept saying how confused I was about the book. And
I thought that one was great because it was like you and Derek, he could kind of like teach you about it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the plot is, surprise, surprise, it's set in a convenience store. And it's about a 36-year-old Tokyo resident, Keiko. Keiko has never fit in, neither in her family nor in school. And when at the age of 18, she begins working at a convenience store called Smile Mart, she finds peace and purpose in her life. So in the store, unlike anywhere else, she understands the rules of social interaction. And she does her job and she plays the part of a quote-unquote normal person excellently. She's very happy, but everyone around her, from her family to her coworkers, increasingly pressure her to find a husband or to start a proper career.
Did you know much about it before you started reading?
I think I knew pretty much exactly what this blurb.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about how an older woman working in a job that's stereotypically you see a lot of like teenagers, kids or like university kids in, whereas she's an older woman. What would you say is your favorite thing about the book?
I think my favorite thing, I love a lot of things about it. The thing that really stands out to me is just how clear the prose is. I
my
really
God.
like that. And also how likable the main character is. Like, I just love her. I adore her. She is so cute and interesting and strange. And I think the book just really gives you such a really great lens into what it's like to meet her.
I so agree. And with the straightforward writing style thing, I love that. And yeah, a likable main character.
Yeah, because I know you hate it when they don't do that.
I think I have liked books with unlikable main characters, but this one, I think it ties back to what we were saying in our last episode, which is the story having empathy for the character.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way because, we see how Keiko struggles to fit in. Right? Like, that's absolutely my favorite part about the book, which is just how well the author portrays the pressure of fitting in. And then when you don't fit in, everyone feels like they're entitled to ask you private questions. Yeah, it's that, when they notice that you're just a little bit odd, they feel entitled to be like, how come you don't work at a full-time job? Or why aren't you married? You're not ugly.
Oh my God, I love the amount of like passive aggression in this book.
Yeah, and then it's just like everyone suddenly seems like an expert on life, and then they're just so intent on fixing her.
Right.
And also, I love Keiko's innocence in a way.
Yes, because I was going to say, like, the thing is, when you hear those things, the things that other people are saying, you think, oh, like, the main character would be really bitter about it. They'd complain, they'd hate it a lot. But Keiko has a very different way of seeing things where she's just like, she's more confused than she is like appalled or like ashamed or downtrodden by any of these things.
That's so true. And that's in clear contrast with the other character, right?
Yeah.
I think we can say his name because he appears pretty early. His name is Shiraha, I think. Yeah. And I think Shiraha is also someone who doesn't fit in, but he is all of those things that you just said.
Yeah, exactly. So they very much like juxtapose each other.
Definitely.
So their interactions are quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like Keiko is set up like from the outset. Like you just like her. And I think one way they do that really well also is like it's not just a book about how her life is hard, but it's also about the things that she's like really drawn to and excited by. And
yeah, the way that she loves the convenience store, right?
She loves the convenience store so much.
And then the way it's described, I love it too.
Yeah, you love it too. Which actually, like, I think also makes this a really good book for like the foreign market, because I do think when people go to Japan often like as foreigners, our minds are just so blown by the convenience stores. They're like, oh, you could get katsu at the convenience store and it's so clean and everyone's really nice. And so in a way, it also still feels kind of exotic.
Yeah.
Like, you still understand that subtext of like, oh, like, in this society where like it's a loser thing to work in the convenience store at age 36.
Yeah, Westerners can't understand that.
So it's such a great setting.
It's such a beautiful setting, and also it's a perfect setting for what the author wants to say, because it's a place that never closes. Right? You don't.
Can you
take
say
break.
more? Like, what's the meaning of that to you?
Okay, so I love that bit where Keiko started working at that store on the day it opened, right? And then she's like, we're open on this day and we never closed for a single moment after that. And it's like society itself, right? It just never stops. And then it's she goes
it's
in
like,
there.
oh, you can't escape like the rules and structures of society.
No.
It's like constantly chugging along.
Exactly. And then you have to fit in, and it's not like something you can take a break from when you're tired. You just always have to fit in.
I never thought of it that way.
I did, and I love that. I don't know if it was intended. It doesn't matter. I took away from it that way. And what you said is so true with the foreign market. Like, it's such a Japanese thing.
Yeah.
It's such a Japanese thing to have that convenience store culture.
And I think this also ties into what we were talking about earlier with trying to write about what's in your immediacy, culturally speaking. And so when I think of, my connotations with like average Japanese life. It's very much revolved around work. And as you said, that like constancy.
Yeah. And something else that I love is that this goes back to Keiko's innocence, is that she's just so confused. And her confusion is so relatable.
It's relatable.
God damn it, it's so relatable.
Yeah, well, because they position her as like, oh, she's like really weird and like everyone kind of looks down on her or thinks there's something wrong with her. But then it's also like when she explains the stuff that goes on around her, socially speaking, you're like, yeah.
It is weird.
I relate to that.
Right? And it's just... I think it makes a beautiful argument where, you know, we assume certain things are quote unquote instincts, that you're somehow born knowing how to do it, like you know how to pee and poo, like you're born knowing how to socially interact with people, how to read social cues, how to want certain things in life or how to get them. When in reality, of course, that's not instinct. You're not born knowing to do that, and it's very hard for some people.
Yeah.
And you know, like it's BS to say that you're supposed to just know how to do it. For someone like Keiko, and for me, like a lot of the times, I just don't know how to do it. And that's why it's so relatable.
Where you're like standing outside an event and not sure if you're meant to go in.
Exactly. And I think everyone can relate to this in some ways when you just don't know the rules and you don't really fit in. Right?
Yes. And that's why Keiko really loves the convenience store. And this is all very like laid out very explicitly.
Yeah.
But it's like, the convenience store represents this place where the rules are very clear. When they train you, they give you a manual on what you should say to a new customer or what you should say to a customer who's browsing around, or how to sell things and how to arrange shelves like down to the very detail.
Yeah, how to cook the hot food as well.
Yeah. And so I guess it's like in Keiko's eyes, it's like, oh, like they've given me a manual on how to succeed in this part of the world. And in that way, because like I was actually looking at a bunch of the reviews, and especially the negative reviews, and a lot of people were saying like, oh, she seems like kind of sociopathic or psychopathic. And I feel like that is just like totally like such a, you know, it's like they're missing like half the book, right?
Yeah, she just seems so innocent to me.
Yeah. Well, I think they were really focusing on like the early should I talk about spoilers? This is like in the first 10 pages.
Are you talking about the school incident?
Yeah.
That's definitely not a spoiler. That's so in the beginning.
So it's like, oh, she sees these two kids fighting with each other and they're kind of like getting a bit physical. And so she grabs a shovel. Well, like someone's like, oh, someone stop the fight now. And so she grabs a shovel and she like bonks them on the head. And then everyone gets really angry at her. And she's like, I was just doing what you told me by the same means.
I love that.
So it was like 1 + 1 = 2 to her. And everyone's like, no, you're not allowed to do 1 + 1 = 2. So yeah, there's that aspect which I can understand why people are like, oh, that's really bad because violence is bad. Fair enough. And maybe if you're a kid, like that's really alarming. There's like a bit about her dealing with a dead bird and not like feeling or like expressing empathy for it in the same way that people typically would.
Damn, I found that so relatable.
Wait,
it's the shovel thing. It's like honestly, sometimes with my like urge to question the world, I feel like it comes from that. It's like, you know, like you told me to stop the fight. That's just what we want to do. Like even if it means beating the kid in the head.
Yes,
like,
and maybe we have this thing in common because I'm told a lot by other people like, oh, you're very direct. And I'm like, I don't feel direct. I feel a lot of times like I'm still dancing about the thing that I really want to say, which is even more direct than that.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're just avoiding the thing that is in front of you. What was I going to say? I can't remember.
No, it was just very relatable. And then that the rules had to be explained to her.
Yeah.
Or like, I guess.
Well, because you can tell by the way that she loves the convenience store so much that she clearly wants to succeed and she wants to be useful to other people.
Yeah,
she
keeps saying
helpful.
that. Yeah, like a cog in society, right? She keeps saying.
He loves being a cog in society, which is also like what's so fun about this novel. Like it's a really, in many ways, like contrarian kind of novel. Like, hey, like some people like being cogs in society. Did you know that? It's actually good for some people. And this kind of comes back to like, I think things those people miss when they just focus on like, oh, she's like a psychopath or whatever. But the thing is like, she's actually very attuned in some ways. So
oh yeah,
she doesn't know how to like instinctively mimic maybe or like pick up on these more ambiguous rules about behaving like a person, but she's extremely observant.
Yeah. Are you talking about that bit in the beginning where she mimics everyone's speech patterns?
Yeah.
Oh, that was genius.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah. And that's so funny because they like lay out a conversation with several people in the room, and it's like every time, like depending, it's almost like AI, right? It's like depending on the intent of the conversation, she'll shift her tone and she'll be like, now I'm picking up this person's tone because I've seen how they adapt to this situation. And in other situations, I pick up this tone. She's like curated it.
Yeah, it's like depending on who
way.
she's talking to, it's like I'm gonna be this person at this moment, and then I'm gonna be that person at that moment. It's just, she's like a chameleon in that way.
Exactly. Yeah. So she actually like picks up on a lot. And so even though this is a short and very clearly written book, there is also, I guess, like a surprising amount of sensory detail.
Before we close off the spoiler-free section, let's just say, who would you recommend this book to?
I'm thinking.
Honestly, I think if you are new to reading, I think you should read this book. If you're new to reading, or if you're new to reading literary fiction, you should read this book because it's beautifully accessible, charming, short, and yeah, there's so much sensory detail to keep you engaged.
Yeah,
and then so I would recommend this to new readers, but also experienced readers.
I think anyone with like a kind of like left of field or like dark humor would really enjoy this. So I think I can imagine there's some people who the humor really just like slides off.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, if you like a bit of the absurd side of things and the like social commentary, I think you'll find it interesting.
Yeah, and if you've ever felt like you don't fit in.
Yeah, 100%.
Which I'm sure everyone has felt that way.
Yeah.
You'll definitely love it. Oh, and what about the whole like autism thing?
Yeah, so I find this interesting. When I went back and I rebought the ebook on whatever, and I noticed in that one they explicitly mentioned autism in the book description, I think. Whereas when I first bought it in 2017-ish, they didn't mention that at all. It's like, oh, that's just like a weird woman. And I think the angle of her being like autistic makes a lot of sense. But I also think it kind of might detract from the book if that's what you expect going in.
Yeah, okay.
Because then you're like, you go in with this sense of alienation already. You're like, oh, this is about an autistic person. I'm learning about an autistic person. When it's like, no, you're missing the point, which is that a lot of these things are very human.
Yeah. I so agree. I think I heard of that word like before I went into the book. I heard the word associated, but I didn't think too much of it because I don't know that much about autism to begin with. So I kind of just interpreted it as not like a mental health study or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're...
I also think like mental health is almost the wrong angle because it is more of like a social critique angle.
Exactly.
The way that like an autistic narrator might make things very explicit.
But oh my God, I love this voice.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, it's so clear. And I just love that, she asks the true questions. Like, why do we assume that that's the way that it's supposed to work? Like, who told you that? Like, why, like, these rules have to be explained to me because...
Yeah.
Like, and you can't make any freaking sense out of the rules anyway. It's kind of like she poses a challenge just so naturally to these rules. And that just reveals that the rules are bullshit.
Yeah, 100%.
Now let's go to the spoiler section. Okay, so the inciting incident, I would say, is very much the arrival of Shiraha in the convenience store. So he also doesn't fit in because he doesn't have a stable income, and he's not married. But the way he reacts,
similar age.
Yeah, the way he reacts is a lot more bitter and violent. And I just love that he keeps bringing up the Stone Age.
Yeah.
The history nerd in me is deeply offended.
Just like cringe. Yeah, and all this like evolutionary psychology crap. It's like
Yeah.
back then when men used to do this and women used to do that.
Oh my god, the commentary on men and women, that was completely genius as well. Do you remember that line where it goes, here in the store, we're not men and women. We're convenience store workers.
Yeah.
Oh god, I love that. It's almost like here.
It's like a utopia.
Right? And it's like the normal rules of men and women don't apply here because we get to live in these like actual rules that make sense, that caters is organized around the real purpose, which is serving the customer, not like whatever purpose the patriarchy exists
it's
to
basically
serve.
a union.
I don't know. I just love that. Like, and then I love how that in the end, this is the spoiler section, that when Keiko finally decides to leave and get, like, they assume she's gonna get married, the workers revert from convenience store workers to men and women.
Yeah.
Gosh, that was genius. That was so good.
What did you like about that?
Like the utopia could not exist anymore. The real life creeps back in again. Yeah, creeps back in again, and you know we just have to go back to being men and women.
Oh,
and that sucks.
It's kind of like Keiko's fantasy world.
I think so.
Store.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's why she loves
gets to, like,
it.
Escape reality by also being very firmly rooted in it. Because it's like the convenience store is so mundane, you know? It's very connected to the like humdrum buzz of day-to-day life.
I agree. You know, with the old lady coming in and everything. But I actually think
the old lady?
Yeah,
old lady?
It's just a random customer that comes in.
Like, when she's like, nothing here ever changes?
Yeah. So it is humdrum, but I think of it as very gleaming and almost like techno sci-fi.
Do you want to escape to the convenience store?
Not really, but I do long for a place where the rules make sense.
I love that. I noticed like when Keiko talks about the convenience store, there's a very like almost animist tone, quite romanticist tone that she uses about it. Like it really is gleaming to her.
Yeah.
And at the end of the novel, she talks a lot about how like she heard it calling to her and like speaking to her about what it needed. That was so fun.
Yeah, that was really good.
She like heard the voice of the convenience store going.
And it's the sounds, right? And she says even when she goes home, the sounds of the convenience store is still around her.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important that the store never closes. You know? It's just always there. And I love that, you know, she eats food from the convenience store as well. So her entire body is made of the convenience store. Yeah.
So there's this whole part where she's like, oh, it's like now that I've left the convenience store and it's been 2 weeks, I realized that since your cells and all the water in your body is replaced by the end of 2 weeks, now no part of my body is a convenience store. And that made me very sad.
One thing I will say though, I wasn't like 100% happy with the ending.
Okay. Wait, did we detail like the inciting incident yet properly?
Oh yeah, right.
Shiraha.
Shiraha, yes. Did you see it coming that they would like live together?
It's been too long since I first read it.
I kind of saw it coming.
Okay.
And there was just like a brilliant bit of irony in there where, you know, Shiraha, when he first arrived at the store, he was trying to chat up the women and the customers, and everyone thought he was a creep, and they couldn't wait. He is a creep. He is a creep, and they couldn't wait to get rid of him, and they were calling him a criminal behind his back, and they were saying people like him are better off dead. But then when Keiko tells them that they're living together, they're just like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you.
Let's get beers.
Yeah, even though you're literally living with a criminal. And then like, we're just so happy that you're being normal. And then they would rather her be normal and in a dangerous situation, living with a dangerous man, than her just being safe and being weird.
Yes.
That's kind of Keiko's sister's attitude as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
God, that was like brilliant social commentary, I think.
Yeah, it is really strange when you put it that way. I guess the charitable view on it is like, you know, once someone is paired up, and this is the most charitably you could look at it, it's kind of like social proof. It's, oh, like, so someone else thinks you're normal and worthy of love, so you must be actually kind of okay. And I do think people try to see the best in others. And also they really like gossip, which is a big point in this book as well. But I do remember, like, when we were growing up as kids in school, we'd always look at our least favorite teachers, and when we saw that they were married, and we'd be really confounded by that. We'd be like, how does anyone find you lovable? You know? And so it's kind of like proof the other way. At least when you're an adult, you're like, okay, well, you must be okay.
It's that old thing where, you know, Asian parents would rather their daughter marry a serial killer than their daughter not
That's an
marrying at
old
all,
thing?
right?
Is there like, has that happened that you know of?
I'm sure I've heard stories like that before.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's just
It
that
signifies stability.
stability.
Even if
Yeah,
you're going to die soon.
you know, abusers as well, right? Like they would rather their daughter marry into like these crazy, dangerous situations than for her to not marry at all, because that's how much social norms pressure you, right? And then like it's actual danger to not fit in.
Yeah.
That's just beautifully done in this book, I think. And even with Keiko's sister, right? Do you remember that bit? This is towards the end now, but like that bit where she's crying about how the fact that Keiko is not normal and it's causing her so much distress.
Yeah.
Like, how much longer do I have to put up with having an abnormal sister? It's just crazy. Like the fact that you don't fit in, it's like you're causing harm to the people around you by not fitting in.
Yeah, I mean that's a real drawback of any society that organizes more around a collectivist or like family oriented thing. Is other people's business is now your business.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So when things are going well for them, they're going well for you. Great, that's nice. But if they're going badly for other people, it's like, oh, am I going to be ostracized? Or like, what is the wording they use? Like the village, like cast out by the village.
Oh yeah.
So they
the Stone Age.
Yeah.
So
that's Shihira's kind of wording around it. So he basically like represents like just the most bitter, the worst possible way of dealing with the way that society is organized. Like just totally solipsistic, selfish, bitter. Like he thinks he's very high and mighty and intellectual and better and smarter than other people, but also he freeloads off of everyone. And he doesn't give anything back. And even like, so when him and Keiko get together, he's like, okay, now you get a proper job so that I can start my online business and get rich from that.
That was so funny.
Yeah, I think Keiko's like, okay, what's your online business? He's like, I haven't done anything yet, but if I just get an investor in 3 months, I'll be rich.
Yeah, it's like he despises women for being freeloaders, but that's all he wants to be.
Yeah, and it's like, why are you mad at everyone else? That's just you. That's you.
And I love that Keiko. You know, if he had been the protagonist of this book, it would be a much worse book, you know. But I love that, you know, Keiko is able to imitate other people, and she is able to at least act, and she sees the value of acting to fit in. But I guess Shiraha just doesn't I guess thinks it's beneath him to even act, right?
Yeah. To fit in. And Keiko, she does have, I think, a good sense of, I don't know, self-esteem, because she can imitate other people, but she doesn't like, so for example, she doesn't pick up Shiraha's traits. Like she doesn't get influenced by him. She just looks at him and she's like, oh, this guy's got a victim complex.
Yeah.
And she says that very clearly. She's like, it seemed like there was a circuitry in his brain that made him constantly see himself as the victim instead of the perpetrator. Because there's also one point where he's like, complaining about criminals or sex offenders or something, And Keiko's you're one step a sex offender, and you're acting like you're above people like that.
I
think other men was his ideas. Other men who take advantage of people are upheld in this society.
I do love how clear-minded Keiko is when she interacts with Shiraha.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes her...
So she's innocent, but she's also very difficult to corrupt as well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's what makes her virtuous and not just she's naive. She's just eternally a child. It's no, she's got her own thing going on.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is an interesting way to have a novel where the character kind of does know themselves.
I think that's the biggest difference. I think that's what I like. It's a self-aware character.
Yeah.
When that character has a little bit of critical thinking ability, and then that's the part of the main character, that the voice that I connect with, I think. And that's what makes me, trust their perspective. And I think even with books where they do unreliable narrators, you still got to make sure that they can think for themselves, so that you're just not brain fogging when you read from their perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I do really like books with insane characters, and sometimes it is just insane.
I was saying how I was unhappy with the ending. Yes. I really wanted Keiko to either murder Shiraha or murder her nephew.
But that would be bad for her. That wouldn't be a good thing for her.
And then that's where I step out and be like, she's just a fictional character. Right?
How would you have seen that play out?
Or she could murder her nephew, to stop him crying. It's like she lives by her own rules,
That's
right?
That's a worse ending for her than when she started off.
But I feel like that would
be more like a horror or something.
Maybe, but maybe that will make the point of the book stronger. Because here, in the end, she kind of goes back to the convenience store, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen, right? She's going to live and work in that store for the rest of her life, because that's where she belongs. I don't know. That's kind of like a safe ending for the experiment.
Is it because it was anticlimactic?
A little bit. Yeah. I wanted it to, she tried stepping out of the convenience store and she lost structure in her life. And I want something so disastrous to happen to see, what happens when you push people too far out of what they want to be.
Oh, okay. So you wanted it to be more of a bit of a morality tale or
maybe the ending. Yeah. Maybe the ending would be. Because I really dislike everyone who pushes Keiko. I want them to be punished.
You wanted a revenge story?
Yes.
I just think I guess you're doing an American psycho thing. Well, that's different. But the thing is, that revenge would be bad for her. She'd go to prison, she'd still be worse off.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, but you just wanted to see that fantasy. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
I think
okay,
so.
So you really related to her.
But
it's also out of character. That's not what she's not vindictive. She's solutions oriented.
If she murders Shiraha,
maybe if Shiraha did something evil, if she saw him trying to rape someone.
It's in that middle of the book when the coworker was like, "Oh, people like Shiraha are better off dead." I was expecting Keiko to go out and murder him right there and there.
Oh yeah. But that suggests that she hasn't grown up since she was a child.
I know, that would have been bad. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's so funny.
No, I think you should explain why it's an American hero's journey.
Okay, yeah. So look, it's a hero's journey because it has, I think, essentially the same formula, which is there's an inciting incident, which
a familiar world, an inciting incident goes on a journey to the unknown.
Which kind of causes her to go and challenge her worldview, go out on adventure, go forth with courage, and interact in the world with the world in a different way. So in this case, it's pairing up with Shiraha and living together in her tiny ass apartment and just living the sham life. So for her whole life, she's never probably never told a lie or anything like that. Like always been by the book of what she thinks should be done. And now she's like, okay, let me try this thing. I'm going to do what other people think I should be doing instead of what I think I should be doing. So that's kind of like the call to action. It messes her up. Like she eventually gets kind of cajoled by Shiraha or manipulated a little bit by him into leaving her job, which she doesn't want to do, but she just does it because she's doing that thing. She hates it so much. So normally you're like, okay, the character must grow through this and find themselves in a new situation. But she does not. She obviously does not find herself like, yeah, she does not end up in a fundamentally new place than she was before. She goes back to the convenience store, maybe like a slightly different one, but ultimately she finds, oh, life is not worth living without being in the convenience store. And also, like, everyone else does it worse than me, so I'm going to do it. So it's un-American in the sense that, like, one, she doesn't land in a new situation externally, and number two, like, I guess is related, is there's no sense of ambition, right? So in my mind, if this was an American story...
Ambition, that's a good point.
It'd be some bullshit about like her harnessing her uniqueness to take over the world or become a great leader or to really lean in to who she is. But sure, she does that in a technical sense, but not in this like grandiose, inspiring sense that feels very American, which is like, when you change, you are going to evolve into this new animal. But here she very much like goes deeper into herself. She changes in a sense that when she goes back to the convenience store, she's like, I know this is who I am. But she's obviously not doing anything fundamentally different.
Yeah, you're right.
She's not making more money. She's not saving lives.
Not even a manager, even.
Yeah, she's not helping her family. And so it's very, I think, taboo in an American exceptionalist culture where it's like, if you have strange traits, you should turn those into exceptional traits. Instead, she's like, I have strange traits and that's who I am, and all y'all can fuck off. I just don't care.
You know, I think you're so right. It's that uniqueness, you know? I think Western hero's journey is all about that individualism, right? Like, you were a loser when you started, but when in the end you become a winner.
Yeah.
But she's
still a loser.
She starts off comfortable and she ends up figuring out that what she wants is to be comfortable, and she chooses that.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I mean, comfortable is one way to put it, right? Because like, when she does decide to go back to the convenience store, she has this like transcendent experience.
yeah, that was
like the convenience store is literally speaking to her about what she wants. So it's more of a thing like, it really doesn't matter what the rest of society values. I know what I'm doing is valuable. I know I'm good at it, and I know this is where I belong.
In terms of just like the very basic outline, it's actually just exactly the hero's journey. Like familiar world, unfamiliar world, and then back to familiar world.
Oh, right, because they like return home and they have these gifts to bear to their village or whatever.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, but in terms of that, like the hero finding the uniqueness in their soul and capitalizing on that, that's not what this book is about.
Yeah, she's not capitalizing on it at all. Yeah, so I think it's really cool.
Okay, I think maybe just one question to close off the discussion. What did you learn from this book, or what's your biggest takeaway?
I would love to have her as an employee if you could just like multiply her.
No, that's very American capitalist thinking.
Yes, let me exploit this idiosyncrasy.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is the social critique aspect of it. The pain of not fitting in, and the fact that being the odd one out gives everyone license to just poke into your privacy, and they make them feel entitled to tell you what to do and find out things about you.
Yeah, because they think they can cure you.
Yeah.
They immediately take on this role that's like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to live life.
I think that's my favorite part of it.
Cool.
Yeah, and then that bit where people think she and Shiraha started a relationship, and then she's like, I don't even have to volunteer any information. They're making up a story like just by themselves already. I don't even have to tell them anything, and they already think they know everything about us. Yeah, that was brilliant, and I think this kind of social satire is just right up my alley.
Awesome. So is it like a 4 or 5 out of 5?
Honestly, I think probably 5 out of 5.
Oh.
There isn't a lot of bad things I can say about it.
Oh, I found a Fangling favorite.
Yay! Thank you so much for recommending.
You're welcome.
And honestly, I enjoyed reading it so much as well. I guess that's it for Convenience Store Woman, and let's move on to The Whole. Hey everyone, this is Fangling in editing. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. It is getting quite long now, so I'm going to move our discussion on the other book, The Whole, to another episode. So please stay tuned for that. We had some really insightful discussion there, and we also compared it with Convenience Store Woman. But for now, I'll leave you with the reminder that if you enjoy Licensed Poetics, please consider supporting the podcast on buymeacoffee.com/licensedpoetics. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and thank you so much to Marlene, the very special guest. It's always a pleasure discussing books with you, and this one, Convenience Store Woman, has truly become one of my favorites. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for your support. If you can, go to Spotify and leave a comment under this episode. It'll be really fun. Thanks for listening to Licensed Poetics. I'm your host, Fangling, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!